Welcome to TechTalk Podcasts by CERT's IT Service Solutions. We continue to discuss, is ITIL 4 overhyped and overrated? In Part 2, Jon Grainger and Jo Peacock debate the roadmap of ITIL. Can AI replace ITIL? Is ITIL training still valuable? And ITIL outside the world of IT? Let's dive into Part 2.
Yes. I suppose just ask you the question, what's the difference between a service desk person being prompted and responding to the AI prompts and actually just handing that directly to the end user to have a conversation with the AI?
It depends on the user. It really does depend on the user. And now, for me personally, I would like to deal with AI. I don't have a problem with dealing with AI, and I'd be quite happy to deal with AI. But then, I understand the technology. When we're talking about some users aren't comfortable with AI. Some users have a fear of AI. Some users have a fear of technology. And it's important that we give those users. You remember, we're about providing value. We're about delivering something that's of quality. And that quality does not always mean that we have to just throw more technology at them. If they don't understand the technology, if they're not comfortable with the technology, then give them a face. Give them a voice at the end of a phone that can help, really subside any fears, that can help to calm someone who's a little bit nervous or someone who's worried that they've got a deadline approaching and that they're not going to meet that deadline.
So you mentioned artificial intelligence a lot, Jo, and quite frankly, I think the record on these podcasts has been something like 15 seconds before we've mentioned generative AI. So it's on everyone's lips. It's all sort of pervasive. And I'm thinking about the ITIL 4 framework, and I'm just going to make it something up. I'm going to call it ITIL 5, or maybe it's ITIL 4 point something. But in the future of ITIL, I'm guessing they're going to have to wrestle with AI, and maybe. I don't know if this is a thing, Jo, but AI service management. There we go. We just made something up, or maybe we haven't. I don't know. What do you think of the, if you think about the roadmap of ITIL? So think about how far it's come so far and what it might be doing over the next 2-3 years. What do you see as the major developments?
I am not going to hide the fact that I have already been vocal about AI and about an ITIL and AI. I'm not going to hide that. There's no point. One of the questions that I have to ask, and I ask myself, is what is the value in certifications right now? What is the value in learning about ITIL and about Prince 2 or PMP or Agile when generative AI can fill that gap? I was leading a PMO not so long ago in the project management office, and somebody asked for a template for a particular type of project. And my first response to them was, do you know what you need to do? You need to open up an internet browser, and you need to get hold of a particular piece of software, some generative AI, and just type it in. Give me a project plan for this type of project. And guess what? It will do that. It will give you something very, very high level. So that comes back to that question then. So why do we actually need ITIL? Why do we need any of these frameworks? Well, the answer is that we do, because we need the experience and we need the knowledge. Generative AI is going to give you a framework, a very, 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 very basic framework. I don't know whether you've ever gone to any generative AI. I have. And I have said, give me an example of an incident process. And what it's given me has been so vague that, yes, I could follow it, but I've got decades of experience in this. I could follow it and I could use that to implement a version of an ITIL process. Absolutely, I could. But that's because I've got the experience. Generative AI is no substitute for the experience. But now that we're in ITIL 4, and ITIL 4 is very fluid and very flexible and doesn't have the prescriptive nature of, say, ITIL 2, then we have to ask the question then, can generative AI replace ITIL 4? Well, generative AI will take information and take data from what is freely available. And at the moment, ITIL 4 is freely available. ITIL as a framework is freely available out there. If we stopped with ITIL now, said, right, that's it, no more ITIL, then what information would generative AI have to draw from? It wouldn't have any information to draw from. So we would lose the value in having a best practice framework. So I'd like to see ITIL 5 or ITIL 4.5, whatever you want to call it. I'd like to see the next version of ITIL actually bring in AI. Now, what does that look like? For me, I don't know. Right now, I'm still trying to work that out. We can use AI to help us in so many ways. And what I do know is that the more information we put in to the prompt, the better the quality of the information that we get out, and the better the quality of the, of the framework that we could get out of it. So could we use AI to create ITIL version 5? Probably yes, we could. But would it be then relevant?
Yep.
That's another question, because generative AI cannot tell you what every single organization looks like around the world. And
Yep.
it cannot give you a framework that's going to work in all situations. It needs development. And, what I would like to see is that we have not just a conversation around AI, but we actually have a really meaningful decision that's made on moving forward with ITIL, with AI. Because right now, I have to ask the question of myself, why do people actually still need training? I personally have seen a drop in the number of people that actually are looking for ITIL training. Now, is that because they believe that the market, or because they don't believe in any value to any training or any accreditation anymore? Is that because they believe that generative AI is going to do it for them? I mean, as somebody who is a leader myself, I have said to people, go to generative AI and find a process. So I'm sort of master of my own destiny in that one by saying, well, no, you don't need the training, just go over here. But then at the same time, I think that if we rely too much on AI, we're going to find that it becomes so diluted that there no longer is that consistency around the framework. There no longer is that consistency of language. So I think we've got to be really careful. It's a tough question.
Deliberately so, Jo. And I mean, from my experience, I've seen lots and lots of service desks where we've looked at the incidents data and there's just tons missing. And actually, I would say a very unrealistic and ambitious set of data that wants to be captured, right from the get-go. And either you have an elongated incident logging process, or over time, you get less data being captured. With generative AI and other branches of artificial intelligence or machine learning, I think there's an opportunity to have more of that data set automatically generated. And then what I thought was really interesting is whether we could use the sort of the searching element of generative AI to basically look at a set of rows in a database and ask it to differentiate between what it thinks are incidents versus problems versus service requests. And then also ask it to look at a document and on the basis of that document, prioritize let's say the incidents. Because the prioritization document is something that you could maintain very much, aligned to your organizational goals. But that's the other thing that I see in the kind of the manual approach to incident logging is there is inevitably some sort of delay until A, it gets categorized correctly, and B, it's got the right reflective prioritization. And all of that is kind of dead time to finding that one needle in the pile of needles. I've definitely copied that expression from someone else. That's that fear of, somewhere in the current list of however many incidents, there's one in there that's really important. Could AI be like a kind of an attentive kind of supervisor looking in and trying to find, and doing that maybe, Jo, alongside the human activities. So not instead of, but as a kind of an augmentation. I don't know.
You brought up 2 points there, and I want to come back to the data one, but the first one was about the prioritization there, and can AI act as that sort of that oversight? We've got to be careful. We've got to be careful with that, because we cannot use AI completely in isolation as far as prioritization is concerned, because AI, the one thing it doesn't have is any discretion. It can analyze based on data. It can look at all of the data in front of it and say, okay, we've now had 100 incidents about this exact same thing, so I'm now increasing the priority of these incidents, or I'm now creating a major incident. And it can do that, yes, absolutely. But the decision that it makes is based purely on data. It doesn't make decisions, and it's not at a point yet where it can make decisions based on discretion. In other words, oh, I've just realized that actually we've only had one particular incident about this, but I also know that we've got a bank holiday coming up, and I know that there aren't going to be many people in the office this afternoon, and payroll is down, and so therefore we need to increase the priority of this. It cannot make that decision just yet. It might know that there's a bank holiday coming up, but it doesn't know that everybody's decided to take the afternoon off because, things are a little bit quiet. So I think that we've got to be careful of. But
Yes.
I also want to come back to what you just said there about data and about it can analyze data. One of the biggest problems that we have, and we've had it for decades in IT, is this. I want to call it, I'm getting passionate now, because I want to call it this fascination with too much data. I'd see organizations decide on a service management tool set because, it has 175 reports out of the box. And my first question is, why do you need them? Which of these reports are you going to be looking at? Which of them are important to you? And why are you collecting all this data? And that's my first question. As an end user, let's say I'm logging my own incident. Let's say I've gone onto an online portal and I'm logging my own incident. As an end user, if I've got 75 different fields that I have to fill in and they've all got an asterisk next to them because they're all mandated, then guess what? I'm probably not even going to bother. I'm going to try and
Yep.
fix it myself.
Lots of spaces inserted.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm going to try and either fix it myself, or I'm going to find a way around it. And sometimes processes become so inefficient that we end up investing more time in finding a way around the process than we do in actually following the process. But it's the same with data collection. If we collect too much data, we can get AI to analyze that data to its heart's content. It'd be great. But why are we using it? What is it for? Does it serve a purpose? So we have to be efficient in our use of AI, as well as being efficient in our use of, IT itself.
Yeah. Yeah. No, that's a really good point. So just getting into a question around scale. So if you think about, I think you've worked in huge UK public sector organizations, as have I. And then you've got, let's say, I don't know, an estate agents or a small group of estate agents, something like that. Do you think, Jo, that ITIL scales? Do you think it's got a sweet spot with, obviously it came out of UK public sector, which has got scale. Do you think it addresses scale, or do you think it's tailored a bit more towards the larger organizations?
I think if it's implemented correctly, it does address scale. But I think that with ITIL 2, that was the danger of that perceived prescriptive nature of it, in that it was perceived as being for very large scale organizations. And if we take out that prescriptive nature, I think absolutely it addresses scale. We look at this on an individual basis, and when I say an individual basis, I mean an individual single person, because every day, if my laptop were to blue screen right now, what would I do? I would panic. No, I would. I'm not on my laptop, but I would look at it and I go, oh, and I turn it off and I turn it back on again. And that's incident management. Just really, really simply, do I need to ask the question, why has this happened? And if I don't, then forget about it. Let's just reboot. Let's just restore normal service operation as quickly as possible. once I start asking the question, why did this happen? In exactly the same way as you take your car into a garage to, to find out why there's a light on the dashboard, then that's when you're into problem management. That's when you're into problem diagnosis. So do I think that this is scalable? Absolutely. And I also think that ITIL can be applied to so many more situations than just IT. And in fact, many years ago now in ITIL version 3, I actually explored that I think there's a video floating around on the Axelos website somewhere that I did for them on exploring how we can utilize ITIL outside of IT and how relevant it is in other sectors. It's not just within IT. So do I believe it's scalable? Absolutely. But I think you have to have that experience to be able to recognize that. Do I
Yes.
think it's applicable to other industries and other sectors? Absolutely. But I think, again, you have to have that experience to be able to recognize that. And that's the one thing that we would lose if we were to delve too much into the AI realm and think about automating, then we would lose that experience.
Yes. So, Jo, if you think about the 20 years or plus years ago when ITIL came out and the selection for you and I and businesses of what tools to use in HR, in ERP, and just all the different flavors, I think a lot of there were a lot of gaps there, and also there was sort of quite extreme. So things were either extremely expensive or the cheaper stuff didn't really hit the mark. So there was a lot of in-house, earnest, well-intentioned in-house development of applications. Now, turn the clock forwards to 2024, almost 25, and there are thousands of different applications for pretty much every domain you can think of. When they run in the cloud, we call them SaaS, or software as a service. And so the connection between that traditional IT team and the actual folks that are running that SaaS application is different. And it also means that you've got multiple organizations in play. And there's something called SIAM, which I think the first time I heard of SIAM was 2016, but I might have been late to the party. I can't remember. It's not ITIL. I don't know, actually, Jo. I don't know if SIAM is ITIL, but there was a sort of a relationship between ITIL is you managing your sort of IT organization, and then suddenly we've now got multiple organizations thrown in. What's your thoughts on, I suppose, why would SIAM be necessary, and how would ITIL play into a successful SIAM implementation?
SIAM is something that I think that we should be talking more about. And just we as an industry in general, I think we should be talking more about. It doesn't replace ITIL. It really, really doesn't. So what ITIL looks at is managing our services. So it looks at the, that relationship within an organization of, these are our customers. They sit up here. These are our end users and our customers, and this is IT. And it looks at the relationship between IT and the customers and the users. And ITIL is absolutely great for that. ITIL also looks at, we have practices that look at supplier management. But, what we're doing there is we're talking about sort of, looking at individual suppliers and managing these suppliers with a consistency. And ITIL talks about having that consistency with all of these individual suppliers. But the fact of the matter is that, and this is where SIAM comes into play, because the simple fact is that not all of our suppliers work in exactly the same way. And it's very, very difficult to have that consistency. So where we're talking about having our customers and then, our services, so ITIL, and then our suppliers, what SIAM does is say, where we've got these services, we have what's called a service integration layer and a service integrator. And that's where ITIL sits. It sits in that service integrator layer. So we still have all of our practices, all of our processes, and all of our policies, etc. But we acknowledge that we have got lots of individual suppliers and they all work in different ways. And so that integration layer, we're not replacing incident management or problem management, etc. We're bringing a layer of common sense into that relationship. If I think about, let's say, just for example, an example that everyone can relate to. So we all have used Microsoft in some way, shape, or form. We all have used, let's say, SAP in some way, shape, or form. We're all using perhaps Google in some way, shape, or form. So we've got three very, very large service providers that we are using software as a service. We use their applications in the cloud. Now, they're sitting here in their verticals, and then here we've got the ITIL, if you want. We've got the service integration layer, and we've got our customers and our users. Now, ITIL will tell us that we should have service level agreements in place between IT and our users. And those service level agreements should represent what's valuable to our users and our customers. So, by rights, then that service level agreement should say, okay, then I'm IT and I'm going to respond to your incident within 4 hours. That's great. That's what represents value to our customers. Okay, and our customers have agreed this, and we're great. Now, let's look at the back end, though. And the back end is that we're trying to deal with Microsoft, we're trying to deal with Google, we're trying to deal with SAP. Now, as an individual organization or an individual person, have you ever tried to go to Microsoft and say to Microsoft, by the way, you will respond to these incidents within 4 hours? Microsoft are not going to listen to an individual person. Microsoft are not going to listen to a large organization. I'm not saying that they're going to be inflexible. That's not true. But what they are going to do is they're going to say, this is our standard service agreement. And so with our standard service agreement, then this is the service we provide. And so we've got this layer of IT that sits there that now has to negotiate those terms with the customers. And now we've got to go back to the customer and we've got to say, actually, we can't give you a 4-hour response on your incidents. We can only give you an 8-hour response on your incidents. All of a sudden, IT aren't providing value anymore. And so that's where SIAM fits in. SIAM fits in and looks specifically at that relationship and looks at that model and says, okay, how do we work with this? This is what we've got to do, because we only want one SLA. We want one incident response between IT and the customer. We want that 4 hours. But with Microsoft, they want an 8-hour response. And with SAP, they want a 24-hour response. And with Google, it's a 48-hour response. So SIAM sort of sits there with ITIL and says, okay, how do we manage this? Let's look at how we get the best out of our suppliers to be able to deliver the best to our customers. You could say, well, it's okay, our customers can just liaise directly with Microsoft. Well, okay, but now our customers are going to have to liaise directly with all of these different suppliers who are all going to be talking languages that they're not particularly familiar with. So again, we need that integration layer in place. Even when our IT services are completely outsourced, we still need that integration in place. I like to think about ITIL in that instance as being the translator. It takes what our customers need and what our users want to see, and it translates that to our suppliers and the other way around as well. So SIAM, to me, is something that we just don't talk enough about, because we're all dealing with this. We're all dealing with the multiple suppliers now. We just need to be a little bit smarter and a little bit more consistent on how we deal with them.
Cool. Well, look, Jo, you've taken us from like the very beginnings of ITIL. It's sort of birthplace within UK public sector. You've said it can be used, it's scalable, it can be used for large and small organizations. I think you've put forward a case to say it remains very relevant. Clearly there's a lot to be thinking about in terms of AI, and what we do, not just within ITIL, but societal impacts, which is just a wide topic already. But also that ITIL is acting as this translator, and therefore can scale to to multi vendors and lots of different situations. So, Jo, I want to just say a massive thank you for your for our fascinating conversation today. Just before we go, it's the big one, which is, will ITIL survive in the next 10 years? So 10 years from now, will ITIL still be around? And, just for fun, what version will it be on?
Well, I mean, if we look at past history, it's just going to be on ITIL 5 in version in 10 years' time. But I would, will ITIL survive? I think ITIL is needed. I really do think that there is a consistency that's needed across our IT services and a consistency across the industry in the same way that we decide that we're going to call this a PC and we still call this a PC around the world. We need to have consistent terminology and consistent ways of approaching things. Will it still be called ITIL? I don't know. It's now in the hands of PeopleCert. I don't know. This is the first time that it's truly been in the hands of a private sector organization. And so Axelos was not fully private sector. But I guess I should sort of, when Axelos was formed, it was formed using resources from the public sector as well as from the private sector. And so now it's fully private sector. So how PeopleCert will address the direction of ITIL, I really don't know. Do I think it will still be around? I do. I'm hoping that it will bring in some AI. I would think that in 10 years' time, if ITIL hasn't brought in AI, then we probably are talking obsolescence at that point. So what do I think it will look like? I'd like to think we're still using the same language, and I'd like to think that we are more automated and more friendly towards, artificial intelligence. And I'd like to think that it still would have some relevance.
Brilliant. Jo, thank you very much. And everyone listening, I think we very much appreciate your contribution. And when you view this on various formats, I'm sure there'll be some comments and discussion because who doesn't like a good discussion around ITIL? So Jo, thank you very, very much for your time.
Thank you ever so much. And I always welcome discussion. I always love to have those challenging conversations. So please, don't feel as though, I don't want anybody to feel intimidated that they can't, have those discussions. I'd love them. But thank you. Thanks ever so much for your invite. And thank you ever so much for your time.